Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world where warriors once sat in silence, not sharpening their blades or plotting ambushes, but sniffing warm trails of perfumed smoke rising from a bed of white ash. You're inside a soft-lit room in 16th century Kyoto. Tatami mats hush your footsteps. A flickering oil lantern casts shadows that sway like lazy ghosts. In the center of the room, a small ceramic brazier glows gently. A few men, tall, stern-faced, and impeccably dressed in silk kimono, sit kneeling, not in battle stances, but with eyes half closed, focusing not on sound or sight, but scent. And tonight, you're joining them. There are no shouts here, no clashes of metal, only the occasional delicate clink of a tiny lid being lifted, a soft intake of breath, and the murmur of someone whispering their guess. Is this the first spring rain? Of course, you probably won't survive this if you're expecting a straightforward board game. Kōdō, the Way of Incense, is more like elegant nose kung fu than anything you've played before. The rules are mysterious. The rituals are rigid. And that smoke? It's not just smoke. It's poetry. It's memory. It's competition. And yes, it's expensive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're ushered to your seat on the tatami floor by a silent attendant in deep indigo robes. There's no applause, no introductions, just the calm rustle of fabric and the faint whiff of sandalwood trailing from someone's sleeve. You're handed a thin wooden tally with a symbol carved into it, a moon maybe, or a wave. You don't ask. That would be rude. The air smells, faintly of old wood and steamed rice, but beneath it, something else, a flickering aroma you can't place, floral but not sweet, like tree bark after rain with a whisper of plum blossoms. You wonder if you're imagining it, and that's when the game begins. The host, a lean samurai with silver at his temples, places a small incense burner on a low tray. It's not some chaotic open flame. Instead, it's a tiny brazier filled with ash so fine it looks like snow. He slides a small chip of fragrant wood, aloes wood, you overheard, onto a tiny mica plate and sets it over the ash, not on it. No smoke rises, at least not like you're used to. Instead, a curl of invisible vapor creeps into the air like a ghost too polite to be seen. He passes the burner to his right. Each player raises it gently, covers one nostril, and inhales through the tiny vent hole in a motion called monko. Listening to incense. Not smelling, listening. Because in Kōdō, scent is music, and every note must be felt. You copy them, gingerly, reverently, because that's what everyone else seems to be doing. And when the scent hits you, it's like stepping into an entirely different memory. Someone else's, maybe. A childhood you never had in a house that never existed, beneath a cedar tree that was chopped down centuries ago. You're not supposed to say what you think. Not yet. That comes later. For now, you pass the burner on, trying not to breathe too loud or crack your knees on the floor like a tourist. Now let's be clear. Samurai didn't play incense games every day. Most of the time, they were busy doing, well, samurai things. Training, ruling provinces, enforcing order, or politely threatening to decapitate someone. But in the quieter corners of their lives, especially in the more refined courts of the Muromachi and Edo periods, this is how they competed. Not with swords, but with noses. Historians still argue whether this was a pastime reserved for elite warriors or if it trickled down to educated merchants and scribes. Some say it was strictly the domain of aristocrats and warlords. Others point to middle-class diaries with scribbled notes about Tuesday's plum blossom round, lost again. Either way, if you could afford rare incense wood, you were playing in a different league. And speaking of rare, that wood chip you just sniffed? It probably cost more per gram than gold, The most prized aloes wood, called Kiara, is so rare and revered it was often named like a noble: rising smoke, night cicada, drifting cloud. Pieces were passed down like heirlooms. One Edo lord allegedly left his entire collection of incense woods in his will, with instructions that they be smelled, never burned. As the burner completes the circle, players now write down their guesses. Was that the same scent as round one? Or a clever variation? Maybe the host slipped in a duplicate on purpose to see who's really listening. You scribble something vague, morning rain, even though that wasn't an option. Nobody corrects you. Somewhere behind you, a bamboo screen rustles. A servant slips out with the used burner, bringing in tea that smells of toasted rice. No one claps. No one speaks above a whisper. But you notice a subtle nod exchanged between two players. Someone got it right. And the winner? There's no trophy, just respect. Maybe a tiny scroll with a seasonal poem, or a fan painted with plum blossoms. If you're lucky, you get to choose the next scent. By now, you've forgotten your knees hurt. You're half-dozing upright, lulled by the rhythm of the room, the inhale, the pass, the scribble. It's like a ritual dream that doesn't end, and somehow that feels safer than the real world. But make no mistake, this is still a samurai pastime. The same men who played this game also rode into war with incense packets sewn into their armor, not just for spiritual reasons, but so that if their body was found on the field, it wouldn't smell unpleasant. Just let that image drift into your sleepy brain and do what it will. And so the night deepens, the burner goes round again, and the silence thickens like a warm fog. The smoke has barely faded when a fresh chip of wood is placed upon the mica plate. This time, the host raises an eyebrow as he does it, a silent dare. You're still not sure what that means, but everyone else seems to straighten ever so slightly. It's about to get real, or at least as real as a quiet incense guessing game can get. To understand how we got here, though, you'll need to slip back a few centuries, further than the samurai in this room, beyond their lacquered floors and poetic warfare. Because the art of incense didn't start with armor and katanas. It began in the velvet hush of the Heian court, long before warriors became the scent connoisseurs of Japan. Imagine yourself now not as a samurai, but as a noble lady-in-waiting around the year 1000 CE. You spend your days composing waka poems and folding 12 layers of robes just right. You avoid the sun like its social embarrassment incarnate. And yes, you dabble in the early form of Kōdō, not to train your senses for battle, but to woo someone through scent. Perfume is your calling card. You layer it in sleeves and on paper. You press it into fan ribs, or write a poem with a brush dipped in fragrant ink. You're basically aromatherapy flirting at the highest level. Back then, nobles often judged you not just by your poetry or robes, but by the scents you wore. One whiff of a subpar aloeswood blend and your love letter might go unread. A perfect composition of floral and earthy notes? You might just get an invitation to the moon viewing party. And even then, there were games, though not as ritualized as what the samurai would later develop. Historians still debate whether those early pastimes were formal competitions or just clever excuses to show off your nose and your poetic charm. Either way, the idea was there. Incense as language, as identity, as flirtation with fire. But fast forward a few hundred years, and incense starts training for war. As Japan entered the Kamakura period and the rise of the samurai class, these stoic warriors began adopting aspects of aristocratic culture, not just to seem more refined, but to prove their right to rule. You weren't just tough, you were cultured tough. You knew when to strike and how to complement someone's seasonal poetry with a perfectly matched scent. Balance, after all, was a core tenet of Bushido, the way of the warrior. And what better way to prove your equilibrium than by calmly sniffing fragrant smoke instead of, say, flipping a table? By the 14th century, incense had become both an art and a code. The term Kōdō, literally the Way of Incense, was coined to reflect its elevation to the level of other revered disciplines like tea ceremony, seido, and flower arrangement, Kōdō. Kōdō wasn't just about smell, it was about refinement, control, and presence. Which frankly, makes sense. You try keeping a straight face while trying to identify subtle woody notes with 5 warlords watching you. And the samurai didn't just inherit incense, they made it their own. For one thing, they added layers of strategy to it. While court nobles might focus on sensuality and flirtation, the warrior elite turned it into a competition of memory, attention, and discipline. Scent recognition became as serious as sword practice. Some clans even held regular Kōdō sessions as part of their mental training, soothing the nerves, sharpening focus, and bonding over shared reverence for Tiu, he invisible. Which brings us back to your current situation, kneeling on a tatami mat, trying not to let your knees go numb, surrounded by half-dozing men who look like they could either compose a flawless poem or run a blade through you if you insulted their aloes wood. Your host, still stone-faced, selects a new chip of incense wood. He makes no announcement, there are no introductions here, but the scent that curls up feels different. Lighter, almost citrusy. Someone to your left closes their eyes and breathes deep. You try to copy their technique. One nostril, a quiet breath, no exaggerated sniffing. And there it is, a faint edge of something almost spicy, like cinnamon softened by rain. You've smelled this before? Or have you? And that's the thing. In Kōdō, memory is your only weapon. No labels, no cheat sheets, just experience, comparison, and intuition. And when you're wrong, you bow and smile. Losing is quiet too. A gentle cough, just one, signals the burner has completed its round. The host lifts his brush and marks the tallies. No words are spoken, but you swear someone smirks. Did they guess correctly, or are they bluffing? This game is more cutthroat than poker, if poker involved sandalwood and poetic metaphors. And here's a delightful oddity. While many historians agree that incense games were formalized during the Muromachi period, 1336 to 1573, others point to scattered scrolls from earlier Kamakura temples that describe monks holding incense gatherings with guessing and rewards. Were these precursors to full-fledged Kōdō? Or simply spiritual exercises misinterpreted through a modern lens? The scholarly incense wars rage on, politely, of course. Meanwhile, back in your scene, a faint knock signals a servant entering with a refill of ash. She glides across the room like smoke herself, silent and unbothered by your presence. Her movements are part of the ritual. Every action, from scooping ash to placing the burner, is practiced, precise, and nearly invisible. You wonder if any of these servants ever get to play. Some probably know more than the guests. And then, before you can drift too far into thought, the host opens a small wooden drawer in the incense chest. Out comes a new chip of wood, this one wrapped in rice paper and tied with red silk. There's a ripple of interest among the players. Rare wood, possibly Kiara, the kind only brought out for important occasions, or to mess with new players like you. The chip is placed, the smoke released, and time feels like it folds inward. You can't tell how long you sit there listening to scent. Minutes? Hours? Maybe this is how immortality feels. Trapped in a beautiful room, chasing memories you never had, surrounded by men who know exactly what you don't. The burner reaches you again. You inhale slowly. The scent is dark, honeyed, almost fruity. It reminds you of the end of autumn, of shriveled persimmons and chilled air. You exhale, a little dazed. You don't write anything down this time. You just let the scent stay with you. The game drifts on like the smoke itself, unhurried, rhythmically looping, quietly intense. No one rushes. No one complains. The silence isn't awkward. It's cultivated, like moss growing thick and velvety in a garden where no footsteps disturb it. And yet there's a low pulse of tension beneath it all. Not the kind that makes you clench your jaw, but the kind that keeps your spine straight and your senses quietly alert. You're beginning to understand that Kōdō isn't just a pastime, it's a discipline, a training of presence. And now it's time you learn the rules, or at least the ones anyone's allowed to explain. The host clears his throat, one soft cough, almost musical in its timing. From a drawer in the incense chest, called a kobako, he retrieves a folded sheet, rice paper, handwritten, a scent list perhaps. No, this is tonight's Kumiko game setup. Think of it as the match's choreography. In Kōdō, there isn't one fixed rulebook. Every game can be designed anew. There are many forms, but tonight's is Genjiko, a literary scent game inspired by the tale of Genji. Yes, that Genji. The emotionally complex heartthrob of the Heian period who cried under wisteria trees and probably wore better robes than you ever will. Each round of Genjiko involves comparing multiple scents and determining which ones are the same and which are different. You're handed a slender slip of paper with a series of vertical lines drawn on it. Some lines are connected, some are not. These are scent patterns. After the incense rounds, you'll mark your guess by drawing matching lines between the rounds you think contained the same scent. It's like a mix of logic puzzle, memory test, and nose Sudoku. Simple, right? Except no one will tell you how many scent samples will repeat, or if they'll repeat at all. That's part of the challenge, and once you make your mark, you don't get to change it. This form of the game became popular in the 15th and 16th centuries, especially among the samurai class, who found its elegance and mental demand the perfect antidote to battlefield chaos. It was both an escape and a sharpening tool, like meditating with a riddle in your lap. And don't let the soft sleeves and bowed heads fool you. This was serious business. Some lords brought in scent tutors to train their heirs. Others composed entire gamebooks filled with favorite blends, seasonal pairings, and match records, like some kind of scented samurai stat sheet. You take a moment now to notice the scent of the room itself. It's a layering of old wood, warming ash, and the faint sweetness of lingering incense. It's a smell that clings to the walls and your clothes. You'll take it home with you, whether you win or not. When your turn comes, you lift the incense burner just like before. One nostril, slow breath, exhale through the mouth. The scent this time is woody and sharp, with a faint medicinal bite, like crushed pine needles mixed with dried orange peel. You're not sure whether you've smelled it already, or if your imagination's just doing laps now. You squint at your paper. Do rounds 1 and 3 match? Or was that round 2? Or, wait, is this the decoy round? You look around. No one else looks confused. But then again, maybe that's the game. Historians still argue whether Genjiko was always meant to be played competitively or if its roots were more literary, even performative. Some claim the game was originally an aesthetic exercise meant to be shared with poetry readings and cups of tea. Others argue that it always had a quietly ruthless edge, that guessing correctly gave you bragging rights, invitations to more prestigious gatherings, and the kind of respect that might one day keep you from being politically backstabbed. You settle on a pattern, tentatively draw the lines. It feels random. It probably is. And here's the twist. Once everyone has submitted their guesses, the answers aren't revealed immediately. Sometimes they're never revealed at all. Only the host knows. Only the scent remembers. It's less about winning and more about participating in something that rewards attention, presence, and grace under gentle pressure. But yes, losing gracefully matters too. One of the more fringe traditions, whispered about but rarely practiced, involved light-hearted punishments for poor scent performance. Nothing scandalous, just poetic inconveniences. The lowest scorer might be asked to compose a haiku about failure, or serve tea at the next gathering dressed as a fox. One 17th century diary even mentions a loser having to publicly confess that their nose was less noble than a lazy carp. Nobody really knows if that last part is a joke or not. You place your paper face down on the mat. The host gathers the slips, studies them in silence, and then, without a word, places them back in a wooden envelope. No public winners, no public losers, just a moment of satisfied stillness, as if the room itself exhales. The burner is refilled. A new chip of wood appears, this one lighter in color and noticeably smaller. The host handles it like glass, lowering it gently onto the plate with chopstick-like tools carved from horn. Every motion is part of the rhythm, every pause part of the melody. This scent is smoother, silky even, like warm parchment or fresh bread crusts. Not a strong smell, but one that wraps around your thoughts and makes them feel a little slower. And here's where the term listening to incense truly starts to make sense. You're not identifying a smell. You're entering a space. It's less about the nose, more about the stillness that follows. Your senses begin to blur a little. The lantern light feels softer. Someone shifts gently on the mat. You blink and realize your posture has relaxed. This is how samurai unwound. Not with ale or wild laughter, but with silence, scent, and quiet competition that didn't require a sword. And somewhere deep in the corner of your mind, a strange realization blooms. You might actually care whether this is drifting cloud or midnight garden or snow on hollow bamboo. Not because of points, but because now, in this moment, you're listening too. And that's the game. Your eyes have adjusted to the light now, or maybe to the dimness. The room feels timeless, thick with silence and fragrant with memory. You've gone from a curious guest to something more intimate, an almost player, or at least a well-behaved ghost among the seasoned noses. And now, you're beginning to understand the deeper layer. This isn't just about identifying a scent. It's about training your senses to such refinement that the tiniest shift becomes a story. You're about to learn what it means to wield your nose like a blade. See, for the samurai class, incense wasn't just a post-battle hobby. It was part of their sensory discipline. A sharpened mind required sharpened perception. And while most people train their eyes and ears, the nose, that was the hidden weapon. You kneel straighter as the next round begins. This time, the burner is passed by the left hand. The change is subtle, but deliberate. Etiquette in Kōdō dictates such shifts. You're supposed to notice. In fact, every motion is part of the test. Are you paying attention? Are you steady in posture and breath? Do you hold the kōdō, burner, with both hands, with humility and precision? The scent that follows is strong, but not aggressive, resinous, bitter, almost like old paper soaked in smoke. It reminds you, strangely, of a leather book pulled from the back of a cedar chest. You listen to it carefully. And here's the twist. This practice, this way of incense, wasn't merely a party trick or noble pastime. It was used by samurai as a method of mental preparation. Before battle, some would quietly burn incense alone in their quarters, not to pray, but to focus, to still the chaos, to call their mind back into their body. It sounds poetic now, but imagine the context. You're putting on armor, adjusting your helmet strap, and meanwhile you're inhaling a smoky blend of agar wood and clove. Not exactly your average war cry. But this was intentional. Historical records tell us of Kōdō, or incense pouches, sewn into the inner folds of armor, especially under the collar. These weren't for covering up unpleasant smells, though they surely helped. They were for grounding. Scent, after all, is the sense most directly tied to memory. Breathing in a familiar blend could remind a warrior of home, of peace, of clarity. In the thick of battle, one whiff of sandalwood might center you better than a shouted command. And it wasn't just for the warriors themselves. Some commanders reportedly lit incense across their camps before major engagements, not for the enemy's benefit, but to calm the troops. Imagine that, standing in formation under a twilight sky, not to the sound of drums, but to the drifting aroma of kayara wood, a calm before the storm, scented like a temple. Now, historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or reserved for elite warlords with access to the good stuff. Agar wood, especially high-grade kyara, was incredibly rare and imported from Southeast Asia. Some believe only the wealthiest samurai could afford such indulgences. Others argue incense blending and use was more common than we assume, just with more local ingredients like pine resin or dried herbs. The truth, as always, likely drifts somewhere in between. You shift your weight slightly. One foot has gone numb, but the others look composed, so you pretend yours are too. The next burner arrives. And you notice something different. A whisper of heat, a subtle sweetness, a spice that lingers in the back of your throat like a remembered argument. It's bolder than the last round, less quiet, more self-assured. You recognize it immediately, not from memory, but from contrast. Your senses are waking up. And that's what Kōdō does, slowly, without pushing, without alarms. It wakes you gently, trains you in quiet vigilance, like meditation with a pulse. In fact, some schools of swordsmanship, particularly during the Edo period, encouraged their students to study Kōdō alongside calligraphy, tea ceremony, and poetry, not to soften them, but to stabilize them. If you could remain composed while matching incense samples under pressure, you'd probably keep your head when two blades were coming your way. You inhale again, and a new thought arises, one that would delighted an Edo philosopher. Incense, in its own way, is like swordsmanship. It's invisible, immediate, and only appreciated fully by those paying attention. The burner passes on. The host rises silently and moves toward a lacquer box near the wall. From it, he draws a long, rectangular bundle wrapped in faded cloth. He unwraps it carefully, revealing a scroll with calligraphy that glimmers faintly in the lantern light. It's a poem, an old one. You catch the word Sora, sky, and Hai, fire. This is another layer of the game, scent and verse. The poem is not chosen randomly. Its imagery might mirror the wood being used, or its title might be the answer to a silent riddle. Sometimes the scent is designed to evoke the poem. Other times the poem is meant to trick your associations. This, you realize, is no longer a game about guessing. It's an interplay of memory, metaphor, and sense. You're not trying to win. You're trying to understand something wordless, something burned into smoke. The scroll is returned to its box. The host bows. The players bow. You bow, belatedly, but with your best effort. And then comes a pause, a space between rounds. No tea, no chatter, just stillness. You hear the creak of the wooden beams above you. A breeze rustles the paper screen. Someone clears their throat gently. You realize this silence might be the most carefully arranged part of all. And in that breath between moments, you begin to sense it. This wasn't just a game the samurai played. It was a way to remind themselves what peace felt like, even if only for an hour. The break doesn't last long. Just enough time for the air to settle, for the last trace of that bittersweet aroma to dissolve into memory. When the host moves again, it's with the same fluid, deliberate precision you've come to expect. A new chip of wood is selected from the incense chest, thin, light, almost translucent at the edge. A murmur goes around the circle, not speech, not even a whisper, just the shift of attention. You can feel it, like a ripple in still water. It's time for another round, and this time, the incense game begins in earnest. If the previous rounds were training wheels, this is the real thing. You notice the burner is handled with slightly more care now, like it's carrying something fragile, not the object itself, but the moment it will produce. The host's expression doesn't change, but the pace slows. He gently places the burner before the first player, bows slightly, and then returns to his place. This is the first round of what they call kumiko, the full contest form of Kōdō. You've had a taste of it already with Genjiko, but this is a more complex arrangement. More samples, more variables, and more prestige. This isn't just about which scents are the same. This is about how deeply you can remember, compare, and predict. There's no time limit, but no one lingers. That would be impolite. You're expected to absorb the essence of the scent, not overthink it. Listening to incense is not sniffing. It's receiving, like a poem recited in a whisper. You don't interrupt. You don't interpret out loud. You just listen. You receive the burner again, and this time, it's different. The scent is floral, faintly, not like roses or jasmine, but something wilder, like crushed blossoms in dry grass, sun-warmed and sharp. Beneath it, a trace of wood smoke, like someone lit a bonfire in the distance and then walked away. There's a strange tension in it, something comforting and something mournful at once. You wonder if that's intentional. Because that's the secret here. These aren't random chips of wood. Each one is chosen carefully, prepared with a goal in mind. The game master might be trying to evoke a place, a memory, a season, or he might be playing tricks, testing how easily your mind bends toward false familiarity. Some players even try to read the emotions of the host to gain insight. Others study the fire temperature, the ash texture, even the grain of the wood chip to find clues. You start to see it now. This isn't a sleepy pastime. It's psychological warfare in slow motion. The origins of kumiko are as murky as incense smoke itself. Historians still argue whether the full competitive forms began with Buddhist monks, bored courtiers, or samurai strategists. What we do know is that by the early Edo period, entire schools of Kōdō had formalized dozens of game formats. Some were fast and fun, like parlor tricks. Others were hours-long, nerve-wracking duels of olfactory memory. And kumiko? That was the big leagues. Each round is composed of a series of samples. Let's say 5. The host will burn those 5, one at a time, in a predetermined order. Then he'll burn another 5, possibly repeating some of the earlier scents. Your job is to identify whether each of the new ones matches one from the first set, and if so, which one. No visual cues, no repeats allowed in your notes, just scent and silence. You can feel your brain tightening as the burner comes around again. Was that round 2's scent? Or round 4? The one with the burnt grass note? Or the one that smelled like temple incense after rain? You glance around the circle. One man, older, narrow-eyed, and wearing robes so dark they seem to absorb the lantern light, doesn't even hold the burner to his face anymore. He just wafts the scent toward his chest and listens with his entire body. You try the same. You feel ridiculous, but also a little more focused. One of the players scribbles something quickly, confident. Another stares at their paper for a full minute before writing anything. You feel your own hand hover over the ink brush, paralyzed. Not by fear, but by doubt. You're beginning to realize how thin the line is between knowing and guessing. Meanwhile, your thoughts begin to wander, another expected side effect. Kōdō, after all, is as much a meditation as it is a game. And like all good meditations, it draws things from the deep. You start remembering smells from your own life. Your grandmother's wooden drawers, old libraries, citrus peels sun-drying on a windowsill. You blink, startled. That scent from round 3. It reminded you of that. And now you wonder, did that memory come because of the incense? Or was it hiding in you all along, waiting for a key? That's the magic of this game. It's not about having the best nose. It's about remembering how to use it. And yes, people have cheated before. One famous story tells of a courtier in the Edo period who brushed his sleeve against the host's incense chest before the game, hoping to get a whiff of the lineup in advance. He was politely but firmly escorted out, then invited back a month later to publicly serve as the ash refiller for the next game. A punishment? Maybe. But it was delivered with grace and a smile. In Kōdō, even your disgrace smells nice. Back in the present, the host announces the end of the round. Not with a bell, but by folding the scent list and placing it face down on the lacquer tray. No answers are read aloud. No scores are posted. Instead, each player folds their tally paper in half, seals it with a tiny pressed wax stamp, and places it beside the burner. You mimic the motion, unsure what you even wrote anymore. But here's the thing. The point of Kōdō isn't public victory. It's refinement. You're not just training your nose, you're quieting your mind. And in that silence, you begin to notice how many layers the world actually has. The burner is closed for the evening. The fire is doused, not with water, but with a bamboo wand that smothers the coals without a sound. The scent lingers. And for a breeze, flickering moment, the room is perfectly still. It begins with a hush, deeper than the rest. You almost miss it. The shift in the atmosphere, the way the men straighten slightly, how even the air seems to settle with a low reverence. Something is about to be revealed. Not loudly, not with fanfare, but with lacquer, ash, and the soft gleam of treasure. The incense chest is opened. You lean slightly forward, just enough to catch a glimpse. Inside, it's not chaos or clutter. It's an orderly world in miniature. Compartments are arranged like a puzzle box, each lined with velvet or raw silk, holding tiny, precious things. There are slender ivory tongs, brushes with squirrel hair bristles, small spatulas for ash sculpting. There's a slender roll of patterned paper marked with old ink, notes probably from a past game, or a recipe of a blend long vanished into smoke. And nestled among the tools, the real prize, the wood itself. Small, dark pieces of ginkgo, aloes wood, some no larger than a grain of rice, others long and narrow, their edges whittled down over time like ancient fingernails. Some are wrapped in labeled silk squares. Others lie bare, their grains so fine you swear you can see it shimmer in the lantern light. This is the incense chest, the kōbako, and it holds the heart of the entire experience. Back in the 16th and 17th centuries, a chest like this could represent a lifetime of curation. Wealthy samurai and nobility invested fortunes collecting rare woods from across Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, even islands further south. Some chests were passed down through generations. Others were gifted between warlords as gestures of peace or alliances. One record even tells of a daimyo who offered a single chip of kiara, the most prized form of aloes wood, as part of a dowry. That tiny fragment was said to be worth more than a month's pay for 100-foot soldiers. And yes, before you ask, people did fake it. The black market for counterfeit incense was surprisingly active in Edo period Japan. Unscrupulous merchants would soak cheaper woods in resin, disguise them with clever cuts, and pass them off as the real thing. Eventually, elite players developed ways to test authenticity, not with fire, but by tapping the chip against a lacquer tray and listening for the pitch. A true piece of kiara makes a sound like soft glass. A fake? Hollow. You notice the host has stopped selecting from the drawer. Instead, he holds up one piece, just one, and places it on a silk cushion in the center of the tray. He doesn't say a word, but the room reacts. A collective, barely audible breath. That's not just any piece. That's the prized one, maybe even the heirloom. You're about to smell a chip that may be centuries old. It's called Plum Blossom in Snow. No one says it aloud, but someone nearby mouths the name like a prayer. This is a named piece, an extremely rare distinction in Kōdō. Most chips are used, enjoyed, and gone, but a few, a very few, are preserved, cataloged, and cherished not just for their scent, but their story, like a painting, or a particularly sharp insult written in a court diary. These chips are so revered that they're often never fully burned, just a corner shaved here, a sliver sliced there. The host uses tongs to handle it, not out of fear, but respect. And maybe, you suspect, because his fingers would tremble just slightly, and trembling is not part of the rhythm. He places the chip on the mica plate over the ash, and within moments, it begins to whisper its essence into the room. You don't even need the burner passed to know. This scent is different. There's a clarity to it, not strong, not sweet, just clear. Like the space between snowfall and silence. Like the crispness of air that hasn't touched the earth in days. There's something floral, yes, but also woody, a mineral and dry, like crushed porcelain and fading laughter. You don't even try to name it, you just listen. When the burner reaches you, your fingers tingle slightly, not because of the heat, but because you're holding something that generations before you may have held too. A scent passed like a secret through centuries. A time capsule that doesn't need glass, just fire and patience. Historians still debate how many such named woods survived. Some say fewer than 50 remain in recognized collections. Others believe there are private stashes, hidden by incense families too discreet to ever reveal their holdings. A few even argue that most named pieces were fictional inventions, exaggerated by poetic license and marketing bravado. The truth? Likely somewhere in the middle. You breathe it in again. Plum blossom in snow doesn't overwhelm. It doesn't need to. Its power lies in evocation, in what it reminds you of, even if you've never lived that memory. You're not alone in your reverence. Even the most stoic player in the room holds the burner a little longer this time. No one rushes, no one blinks. There is only scent and silence and the slow, soft rhythm of presence. The round ends, but no one speaks. Not because they're waiting, but because they don't want to disturb the echo. Later, the chip is placed back in the silk, carefully, reverently, a corner burned, but most of it still whole. And you realize something profound. In a world where everything moves fast and burns bright, this delicate, unhurried ritual of smelling something without consuming it entirely feels radical, even defiant. A celebration not of conquering, but of restraint. You settle back into your position, the ghost of that plum blossom still hovering somewhere near your temple. You're not just playing anymore. You're remembering how to be still. And that, perhaps, was the purpose all along. The burner is closed, and the last curl of fragrance vanishes like a passing dream. You sit quietly, thus taste of plum blossom and snow still echoing somewhere in your chest. Around you, the other players remain still, not out of fatigue, but reverence. Something sacred just happened. No one needs to say it. They all know. And now, with the chest still open beside him, the host begins to prepare a new chip. But this one is different. Not rare, not named, not even especially beautiful. It's plain, pale, almost a little rough, a workhorse of a scent. Not everything is about grandeur after all. Because now, it's time to focus not on the scent itself, but the ceremony that surrounds it. You're about to learn how a Kōdō master moves. The Kōdōka, as they're known, are not just incense players. They're scent poets, choreographers of smoke. Their skill isn't measured only in guessing accuracy, but in their grace, their bowing, their breathing, the way their fingertips hover, hesitate, and then gently lower the burner without making a sound. Watching them is like watching someone brush invisible ink onto moonlight. Tonight's host, who until now has said almost nothing, begins to demonstrate. He reaches for the incense chip with tongs, never fingers. The tongs are made from polished deer horn, shaped with slight curves to mimic the rhythm of a crane's beak. Every tool in Kōdō has meaning. The ash spatula, flat and slender, designed to make that perfect conical mound. The mica plate, translucent, heat-proof, laid so the chip won't be scorched. And the brush, soft and precise, used to smooth the ash into an even bed, as carefully as painting snow. He handles each step like it's a prayer, not a rushed, desperate one, but a quiet offering to the room itself. You try to imitate, you really do. But the first time your fingers brush the edge of the tray, it makes a tiny clack. Instantly, you feel a hot flush of embarrassment. No one glares, no one reacts, but you feel it anyway. The unspoken elegance of the game has gently, politely informed you. Try again. And you do. Because in this world, How you do something is just as important as what you do. The host, for example, bows before each new round. But not just any bow. The angle is precise, between 30 and 45 degrees, no more, no less. His hands rest on his thighs, his spine perfectly straight. This is not performance, it's practice. One passed down through schools of incense like Shino-ryu or Oye-ryu, each with their own rituals, aesthetics, and techniques. If the tea ceremony is about hospitality, and Ikebana is about composition, then Kōdō is about presence. Full, quiet, unflinching presence. Historians still debate which school of incense came first. Some trace it to the court ladies of the Heian period. Others point to Zen temples where incense was used to mark time during meditation, slowly evolving into something more refined. Still others credit samurai lords who sought to combine scent and sword as a dual path of mastery. Whatever its root, one thing is clear. By the Edo period, Kōdō had become its own distinct art, complete with scrolls, licensed masters, and generations of apprentices. And it's the etiquette that held it all together. Some Kōdoka were famous not for their noses, but for their stillness. One tale speaks of a woman in Kyoto whose incense technique was so precise, she once played an entire match with a sleeping cat in her lap. It never stirred. Her bowing was that smooth. You're not quite there yet. But as the game continues, you start to feel your own body respond. You move slower. You breathe with more intention. You notice your elbow before you place your hand. You lower the burner with quiet fingers. Your back is straighter. Your mind is quieter. It's working. Even the way the incense is burned follows a rhythm. The ash bed is sculpted into a small cone, its peak carefully flattened. The chip of wood is placed not directly in the fire, but slightly above it, on a mica plate balanced just so. If it's too low, it scorches, too high, and it barely releases its scent. The placement must be exact, measured, harmonious. This isn't cooking, it's calligraphy made of vapor. You watch the host adjust the brazier with 3 deliberate movements. His fingers never pause. They know this dance, and then he passes it to the next player, who mirrors the movements in kind. A soft bow, a steady hand, an inhale so quiet you're not sure if they even breathed. And suddenly you realize, this isn't just a game of scent. It's a game of stillness. And stillness, as any samurai would tell you, is a kind of power. In the chaos of battle, it's the composed warrior who survives. In the quiet of this room, it's the composed player who truly listens, the calm one, the patient one, the one who can smell the difference between first rain and lingering rain, between early plum and plum after snow. It's ridiculous, of course, and completely profound. You take your turn, slowly this time, both hands on the burner, a half bow, a quiet breath in. The scent is faint, almost ghostly. A little resin, a little bark, a hint of something citrus. You can't place it. You don't even try. You just let it wash over you like a story whispered in a language you almost remember. And when you pass it on, your hands don't tremble this time. The host offers a tiny nod. Not praise, not instruction, just acknowledgement. You're part of the rhythm now. You're feeling confident now. Not cocky. Kōdō doesn't allow for that kind of thing, but quietly in sync. Your hands move like you've done this 100 times. Your breath, your posture, even your thoughts are soft around the edges. You're not trying to win anymore. You're trying to belong. Which is why what happens next takes you by complete surprise. The host sets the burner in front of the first player, and before the scent even begins to rise, someone clears their throat, loudly. Then they smirk. You blink. Did someone just interrupt? Yes, they did. And now, the unspoken game beneath the game begins. Because here's a secret that most scrolls don't mention. While Kōdō is elegant, meditative, and rich with tradition, it's also a little sneaky, a little mischievous. Not everyone in the room plays fair, not in the way you might think. Tonight, you're about to learn the scented art of subtle sabotage. It starts with something small, a cough, Time to break your focus just as the burner reaches your hands. Then someone else adjusts their sleeve a little too noisily. Another player gently waves their fan, just once, creating a small gust across the room. You don't want to believe it at first, but then it clicks. They're trying to throw each other off. In Kōdō, the most competitive players aren't the ones with the best noses. They're the ones who can break your concentration without ever breaking the rules. And you? You've been too calm, too focused, clearly a threat. You smile to yourself. It's on now. There's a long and surprisingly cheeky history of what might be called incense gamesmanship. A flick of the sleeve at just the wrong moment, wafting your own perfume into the air to confuse someone's scent memory. One Edo period diary even tells of a famous match where the losing player accidentally dropped his ink brush on his opponent's note sheet. It was considered disgraceful, but also kind of impressive. Of course, everything is done quietly. This is not a shouting match. There are no dramatic showdowns. The sabotage is light, graceful, and wrapped in plausible deniability. Historians still debate whether these subtle tricks were seen as dishonorable or just part of the game's complexity. Some schools of incense, particularly the more Zen-influenced ones, insisted on total stillness and integrity. Others, especially in the courtly circles, saw a little mischief as part of the charm. After all, if you can be distracted by a fan, were you really listening to the incense? You decide to stay composed. The burner reaches you again. You perform the gesture perfectly. Inhale, hold, and wait. Was that citrus again? Or something spicier? And just as you're about to pass it along, a soft tap of a fan sounds behind you. Not loud, not aggressive, just enough to stir your breath. You pause, smile faintly, then pass the burner forward without flinching. Two can play this game. During the next break, you take a quiet look around the circle. The players all maintain that perfect neutral face, the expressionless mask of those deeply engaged in pretending not to compete. You spot the culprit. He's older, his hair streaked with gray, but his eyes sparkle with that infuriating glint you recognize from overly competitive uncles at family board games. He sips his tea as if he didn't just wave his sleeve like a smokescreen. So you do nothing. You simply sit straighter. Because here's the trick. The real win isn't scoring the most correct guesses. It's maintaining your poise when others begin to unravel. You remember a story someone whispered earlier about a famous incense master from Osaka who once hosted a blind match. No sight, no sounds, no known competitors. Everyone wore veils. The scents were chosen by a third party. And the winner? A woman who hadn't played in years. When asked how she kept her focus, she simply said, "I stopped trying to win. I listened." You take a deep breath. Inhale the room itself. Not just the incense, but the layers of wood and ash, tea and silk, breath and waiting. It's all part of the composition. And maybe the joke is that scent can't be tricked. Only your mind can. The next round begins. The chip is darker this time, richer. The host adds a tiny grain of clove to the ash for variation. This is allowed in some versions of thasas, a game, especially among more experimental circles. It's called a koawasi, a blend round. The scent that rises is deeper, muskier. You catch a faint sharpness underneath, like scorched cinnamon. Someone coughs again, a deliberate one. You let it roll past you like river mist. Even in a room this quiet, the undercurrents swirl. But here's the best part. No one ever admits to sabotage. It would be gauche. The smirks, the timing, the eyebrow twitches, those are all part of the language. A language that says, I'm going to rattle you without ever raising my voice. It's ridiculous. It's glorious. And the more you think about it, the more you realize. This playful edge is what kept Kōdō from becoming just another rigid ritual. It invites the mischievous, just as the best poetry contains a little wink. just as the best samurai knew how to laugh at death with a haiku. In fact, one of the oldest incense game scrolls ends not with rules or scores, but with a poem. The wind plays no part, yet still my scent moves your mind. Shall I bow or smile? You get it now. This isn't a fight, it's a dance. A dance of scent, silence, and subtle sabotage. The host rises again, and with no announcement, begins to pack the ash for the next round. The fan is still. The players sit straighter. You do too. Let them try again. You're ready. Outside, the moon has climbed higher. You notice it now, how the paper shoji screens catch that cold silver light, just enough to tint the shadows across the floor. The room has grown darker, but no one moves to adjust the lanterns. It's as if everyone agrees that the dimness is part of the mood now, a quieter illumination for a quieter kind of war. And just when you think you've slipped entirely into this elegant, scent-focused dream world, one where competition is as soft as a fan's flutter and everyone seems carved from stillness, the game changes again. Because now, someone laughs. Not loudly, not mockingly, just a soft exhale of amusement, almost like a sigh. But in this room, in this rhythm, it's as disruptive as a trumpet. You glance sideways. One of the players, a younger samurai, dressed in a robe embroidered with autumn leaves, has just failed to identify the last incense round. Utterly, completely failed. And instead of bowing his head in shame, he grins, shrugs. It's plum, he whispers, knowing full well it isn't. And the older player beside him, yes, that player with the fox-like smirk, chuckles in return. Apparently, not every samurai here is playing to win. And that's when you discover one of the most delightful secrets of the incense world. Sometimes, the greatest pleasure was in not taking it so seriously. Tonight is one of those nights. Not every gathering was deadly serious. Some were casual moonlit affairs, part game, part social ritual, part poem circle. And this? This is one of those rare koyukai, a friendly incense gathering, often hosted when the moon was high, the sake warm, and the blades left at home. You weren't invited for your accuracy, you were invited for your presence. And with that, the game becomes something else entirely. The host motions for a pause. The brazier is shifted slightly, an almost imperceptible nudge to center it more toward the circle. He opens a side drawer and retrieves a small ceramic flask. Tea? Sake? You're not sure, but the tiny cups are passed with care. No toasts, no clinking, just sips, and maybe, for the first time, casual eye contact. Conversation begins, not as a roar, but as a ripple. Someone mentions an incense they once smelled near Mount Koya that reminded them of scorched rice fields. Another recalls a blend used in a failed courtship, delivered with such a dry expression that the entire circle erupts in low, stifled laughter. This isn't out of place. In fact, it's tradition. Incense gatherings, especially during the later Edo period, often mixed play with poetry. After formal games, guests would compose short verses about the scents they encountered. Some were elegant. Some were absurd. One surviving scroll records a poem from a daimyo who wrote, after failing every round, even the smoke mocks. It drifts where I cannot guess, leaves me with my nose. A dignified failure, in 17 syllables. Historians still debate whether these gatherings blurred the line between art and aristocratic socializing. Was the incense truly the focus, or merely an excuse for quiet company, poetry, and light competition? Did the samurai elevate the incense game, or did the incense simply give them a way to be gentle without seeming weak? There are no definitive answers, but the moonlit room you're in now feels like proof that both can be true. As the conversation warms, so do the scents. The next chip burned is gentler, floral, light, maybe even a little playful. It carries a note of dried petals and something sweet, like chestnut or fig. Someone compares it to a festival stall. Another says it smells like the sleeves of a courtesan. A third laughs and says, "You'd know better than any of us." The laughter is soft, respectful, but real. It rolls through the room like low thunder on a distant mountain. No one corrects anyone. No one keeps score. This is the other side of Kōdō, the less rigid, more human side. Not every incense game was about perfection. Some were about people, connections, memory, shared stillness. A chance to sit close and listen to the same scent drift between you, binding you not just to the game, but to each other. One story goes that during a rare, peaceful interlude between warring clans, two rival generals met for a koyukai under a full moon. No politics, no weapons, just incense, tea, and the unspoken agreement that scent, for a few hours, would silence swords. No scroll recorded who won the game, but a poem from the night remains. By this fragrant ash, even old enemies dream as one cedar leaf. You imagine what that would feel like, to be surrounded by people who, in other seasons, might have hunted each other across fields of blood. But here, now, they sit with warm sake and a shared burner, quietly guessing whether the last scent was morning forest or autumn wind. And somehow, that feels more powerful than any duel. Back in your room, the host passes the burner again. This time, when it reaches you, you don't rush. You lift it slowly, bow your head just enough, and breathe in. The scent is soft, like clean cotton and toasted barley. Comforting, humble. You don't try to name it. You don't even care what it is. You just listen. The burner moves on. The host smiles, barely, but enough. And you begin to understand. The point isn't to always get it right. The point is to gather, to breathe, to notice, to let the night stretch and fold around you like warm silk, to remember that sometimes peace smells like shared laughter and sandalwood. The conversation continues, not loud, but steady, gentle. And the game, still going, but now it's a dance you're all performing together. No winners. No losers. Just players, breathing the same invisible story. The room smells different now, not just because of the last incense, but because of the shift in mood. You can feel it. Everyone's loosened just a little. The bows are still respectful, the gestures still graceful, but there's a warmth curling into the edges, like a hearth that's been quietly lit in the corner. And right on cue, the host reaches for something nestled deep in the incense chest. Not a wood chip this time. A bundle of paper slips, bound with string. He unties it, lays it out on the mat, and reveals 5 slim cards, each adorned with elegant calligraphy and a small painted motif: plum, mist, waves, a rising sun, a single falling leaf. These aren't poems, they're scent names, or rather categories of incense. The 5 classical types, known collectively as the gomi. Tonight, you're going to learn them, not from a textbook, but through your nose. The host gives no lecture, just places the first card down. Sweet. Then he selects a chip from the drawer. It's darker than the others you've seen, dense and heavy-looking. He places it on the mica plate, adjusts the ash with a practiced flick of his spatula, and lets the heat do the rest. The scent that rises is rich. Sweet, yes, but not sugary. It's more like the sweetness of amber left in the sun. Resinous, warm, a little earthy. The kind of scent that feels golden without being shiny. You smell dried fruit, a hint of aged honey, something nostalgic. And now you understand. The second card is placed. Spicy. This chip is lighter in color, and when it begins to warm, the scent it gives off is sharper. Not nose-tingling, not aggressive, just crisp, edged. There's cinnamon here, or something like it. Clove, maybe. A whisper of pepper. It stings gently, like the smell of fresh-cut cedar or warmed nutmeg. A spice cabinet in the middle of a forest. The host nods toward the group. You're being asked to name it, mentally, of course. This is a test, but also a lesson. The third card, cool. The chip used here is slender, nearly silver gray in the light. The scent? Faint. Whisper soft. Like clean linen hung in frost air. It doesn't announce itself. It simply hovers. There's something herbal in it. Like mint, but older. Wiser. A scent that tells you to breathe slower. It vanishes almost as soon as you notice it. Historians still debate whether these 5 categories were invented during the early Muromachi period, or if they trace back further, perhaps even to Chinese Taoist scent philosophies. Some suggest the categories were once associated with specific deities or seasonal rites. Others believe they were simply poetic devices, a way of bringing order to the intangible. Either way, they became canon. And now, you're inhaling that canon, one breath at a time. The fourth card, salty. Yes, salty. Not like sea spray exactly, but like sun-dried driftwood. A mineral tang. The scent feels older somehow, as if it's been waiting underground for centuries. You imagine the inside of a stone jar left in a temple storeroom. A little musty, a little metallic. Not unpleasant, just deep. And finally, the fifth card, sour. This chip surprises you. The scent is quick, bright, almost tart. You catch citrus, but not the fruit, more like the rind. There's a touch of green to it, like spring leaves crushed between fingers. Something acidic, but not biting. It lingers on your palate like a memory of vinegar. The burner is passed again and again, each scent lingering only for a moment before dissolving into the room's growing fog of impressions. You realize something subtle is happening. These aren't just examples, they're tools, anchors. Once you know the categories, you can start to guess more accurately. Every future scent will contain some balance of these 5 elements. A seasoned player doesn't name by memory, they name by feel, by category, like a wine taster swishing notes around their tongue. And in this way, incense becomes language. Not just metaphor, but structure. Grammar of the nose. You lean forward slightly. The next chip smells sweet, definitely, but also cool. Could be a blend of the first and third categories. And there, at the end of the scent, a faint sour twist. Your brain begins triangulating like you're mapping constellations. This is what the samurai mastered, not just the game, but the framework behind it. Even the names they gave to their favorites reflected this fusion of elements, names like Lingering Echo in Rain, or Midnight Boat Under Willow Fog. The titles weren't descriptions, they were impressions, clues. If you were skilled enough, you could tell what category blend a name suggested. Some players could even reverse engineer the recipe of a blend just by scent. Not always, but often enough that it became part of the legend. There are scrolls from the Edo period that describe scent masters who could read incense like books, using the Gomi system as their alphabet. One particularly eccentric aristocrat, Lord Masanobu of Kyushu, once refused to allow guests into his home unless they could correctly identify 3 out of 5 categories in a blind incense test. His diary includes several bitter entries about visitors who smelled like boiled cabbage and couldn't tell sour from spicy. He died alone, but his nose? Legendary. You smile at that thought. The host collects the cards. No scoring is announced. This wasn't a test for points. It was a reminder, a recalibration, a gentle guidepost to help you keep your bearings in the increasingly complex web of scents. And now that you know the categories, you feel like you've been handed a map. The next round begins. The scent is strong, sweet and salty maybe, or spicy with a cool afterglow. You lean in, not to win, but to understand. And in that moment, you realize what Kōdō truly is. Not a guessing game, not a relic of noble pastimes, not even a meditative art. It's a conversation. between wood and ash, between heat and air, between memory and presence. And now, you can speak it too. The scent arrives long before the burner does. You feel it trailing through the air, carried by the gentle rise and fall of someone's sleeve. It's different this time, not subtle, not playful. This scent is bold, dark, and resy, news with an almost smoky intensity. There's something ceremonial about it, sacred even. You sit straighter, though no one told you to. Your body just knows. And when the burner is finally passed to you, that's when you understand. This is not a game scent. This is a battlefield scent. You inhale, and it's like stepping into the inner chambers of a Shinto shrine, just after the candles have been extinguished. The scent clings to the air like silk soaked in memory, deep, bitter, and complex. There's agarwood here, absolutely, but also something else. Something that feels like lacquered armor and damp horsehair and old oaths. This is incense carried into war. The host doesn't explain. He doesn't need to. The burner moves in a slower circle now, as if giving everyone time to breathe in, not just the scent, but the story it carries. Yes, samurai played incense games, but they also wore incense into battle. Not the way you might imagine, no swirling clouds of perfumed smoke trailing behind galloping horses. No, this was more intimate, more deliberate. Carefully sewn pouches, Kōdō, hidden in the folds of undergarments, tucked beneath layers of armor. A personal scent, chosen before battle. Why? Some said it was for focus. That breathing in a familiar incense blend before drawing your blade helped you center your spirit. Others claimed it was for courage, to remind you of home or temple or a quiet garden. A scent that made you less afraid of death. And yes, there's the darker reason. So that if your body was found on the field, it would be pleasant, recognizable, honored. Historians still argue about the practice. Some insist it was widespread among higher-ranking samurai, part of a broader tradition of battlefield ritual. Others believe it was reserved for only the most poetic-minded warriors, those who believed that a death in battle should still carry a trace of art. But diaries survive. Letters too. One samurai in the Sengoku period wrote before a campaign, "I wear the scent of plum smoke not for vanity, but so my sons may find me with ease should I fall among reeds." You picture it now. A war camp at dawn, fog rolling low over the earth, the faint scent of incense clinging to the collar of a young samurai's armor. His horse shifts beneath him, his hand tightens on his blade, and in his breast pocket, a pouch of sandalwood, crushed and warmed by his heartbeat. It's poetic, it's practical, it's entirely human. And incense didn't stop at the battlefield. Sometimes, warriors burned it the night before battle, alone, in a small brazier, as a form of prayer. Not necessarily to win, just to be present, to remember that breath still belonged to them. There's even a record of one particularly stoic general who, upon realizing the odds of victory were bleak, instructed his page to light a rare piece of chiara. When asked why, he replied, "If I must die tomorrow, let me do so having known the scent of heaven tonight." You hold that thought in your chest as the burner passes again. This time, the scent is even darker, stronger, not sweet, not bitter either. It's the scent of polished iron and wet stone and cracked pine wood. You've never smelled a battlefield, but if memory had a smell, this would be it. Across the circle, one of the older players closes his eyes as he inhales. His hand trembles slightly, not from age, you suspect, but from something else. A memory? A story? A ghost he's long made peace with? There's respect in the room now. Not just for the incense, but for what it represents. Every scent carries a memory, and every memory, in this circle, is sacred, And here comes a strange, quiet detail. Even the ashes were sometimes kept. Yes, kept. After a warrior died in battle, if their pouch of incense was recovered, it was sometimes returned to the family, not burned again, just preserved, a relic, a final whisper. In Kyoto, there is still a temple that holds a small ceramic jar said to contain the scorched remains of a battlefield incense pouch. Visitors are not allowed to open it. They simply bow. The scent is gone now, dissolved into the air like breath into fog. But something lingers, a weight, not heavy in a sorrowful way, just full. The host says nothing, simply retrieves a fresh chip, lighter, gentler. The room needs it now, something to lift the mood. The burner moves again, and this time the scent is soft, a little floral, a little foolish, like a gentle joke told after a long story. No one says it, but you all feel it. We carry scent into battle, yes, but we also carry it home. Because that's what incense has always done. Not just perfume the body, but mark time. Help you remember who you were before the fire, or who you wanted to be if you didn't return. The next burner arrives. You bow slightly, inhale, and in the stillness that follows, the scent isn't just fragrant, it's forgiving. The next burner carries a scent you weren't expecting. It's lighter, brighter, something airy, with a faint sweetness that reminds you of blooming wisteria or silk robes fluttering in the breeze. There's a whisper of citrus beneath it, just enough to tickle curiosity. And then you realize, this scent isn't made for men in armor. This is a scent crafted for sleeves lined with embroidery, for hair pinned with tortoiseshell combs, for quiet rooms filled with folding fans and secrets. You've just met the women of Kōdō. They're not here tonight, at least not physically, but you feel them now, in the perfume of that incense, in the way it dances differently, less martial, more playful, still precise, but with a rhythm that seems teasing. Like someone who knows she'll win, but enjoys pretending she won't. You exhale softly, and the scent wraps around your breath like a silk scarf. Contrary to what many assume, Kōdō was never solely the domain of men. Noble women, especially in the Heian and Edo periods, were not just present in incense culture. They were often better at it. Their noses, it was said, were keener. Their scent memories, richer. Their poetic interpretations, devastating. Historians still debate whether women were permitted in all incense schools or only in more domestic variations. Some scrolls insist Kōdō was a refined masculine art, like sword polishing or falconry. Others, especially the diaries of court ladies, paint a different picture. Gatherings of women exchanging incense blends, composing scent poems, and gently, devastatingly, outwitting their husbands in guessing games. You can't help but smile at that. A kind of duel where the blade is jasmine and memory. One story, widely believed but never definitively proven, tells of a shogun's wife in the Edo period who hosted a kumiko game for visiting dignitaries. The men, all well-trained, well-versed, and somewhat smug, struggled round after round. The host smiled graciously, corrected no one. Then, at the end, she revealed her own tally sheet, perfectly scored. The scent she had chosen? A complex blend called Silent Apology. She didn't win a prize. She didn't need to. There were even occasions when incense was part of matchmaking. A courtship might begin not with a letter, but with a small parcel of fragrant wood. The recipient would burn it alone, interpret the mood, then reply in kind, with a different chip, perhaps, and a poem. It was flirting by way of olfaction. In fact, some noble families trained their daughters not just in poetry or etiquette, but in scent identification. Being able to distinguish sandalwood from agarwood wasn't just impressive, it was a mark of refinement, a social skill, and not every woman in the incense world was noble. Records survive of merchant class women, especially in Kyoto, who hosted small Kōdō circles in the back rooms of tea houses. These were more casual, less rule-bound affairs, closer to koyukai than formal school practice. But they were respected, and sometimes feared. Rumor had it, A few of those women could outsniff any court noble, then write a poem that made you question your entire identity. And here's a little-known tidbit. In some households, wives would prepare their husbands' scent blends before major gatherings, not because the men didn't know how, but because a woman's blend was considered more emotionally precise. She might add a trace of sweetness to soften his mood, or a smoky note to bolster his confidence, a loving gesture, or a gentle correction. You try to imagine it now. A quiet evening, a woman at her burner, her hands steady, her face serene. She's composing not with words or notes, but with memory. Each chip she selects says something she won't say aloud. And later, when her husband lifts the burner at the gathering, he'll smell what she's written, a message of comfort, or defiance, or both. The burner comes to you again, and this time, the scent is more floral. Cherry blossom? No, more like plum. Soft and fragile, with a hint of green beneath it. You imagine a noblewoman standing in the palace garden, her sleeves trailing petals, composing a scent for the next match. And then a memory surfaces, one you didn't know you had. A grandmother's closet. A forgotten scarf that always smelled like warm soap and old wood. A perfume bottle hidden in a drawer. A scent you tried to recreate once and failed. That's what this incense does. It brings you back. It reminds you that scent is lineage. And the women of Kōdō were the keepers of that lineage just as much as the warriors were. One poetic tradition even involved women composing incense letters. A folded note brushed with fragrant oil, sealed with a flower petal, and delivered discreetly. The reader wouldn't open it immediately. They'd first inhale it. Try to decipher the emotional tone from scent alone. No pressure. You pass the burner with steadier hands now, imagining the women who sat where you sit, not in armor, but no less prepared. Because in this world, power doesn't always wear a blade. Sometimes it wears camellia oil and leaves a trail of sandalwood where it walks. The room has gone quieter again, not out of reverence this time, but concentration. You notice the way everyone leans in ever so slightly as the next burner makes its rounds. Not for competition, not for ego, but for something more mysterious, more playful, like they're trying to guess the ending of a story told in smoke. And in a way, they are. Because tonight, the incense isn't just about scent, it's about poetry. This round is different. You can tell before the host even finishes preparing the ash. There's something ceremonial in the way he selects the chip, how he pauses before setting it on the mica. Then, from a drawer in the lacquer box, he retrieves a slip of washi paper, unfolds it, places it face up at the center of the circle. You glance down. It's a poem. 5 lines, brushed in graceful, almost trembling calligraphy. Frost on bamboo leaves. Even the moon forgets names of the autumn wind. I breathe what cannot be said. The ash remembers. No explanation is given, none needed. The burner begins its slow orbit. This is what's known as utako, poetic incense, a round in which players aren't trying to identify a wood or a blend or even a category. They're trying to match a scent to a feeling, to the emotional shape of a poem, and their answer must be in verse. You're not playing scent Sudoku anymore, or scent writing haiku. This tradition, poetry paired with incense, emerged more formally in the late Muromachi period, when aristocratic gatherings often included multisensory games. One guest would compose a poem, another would select a scent to match it, a third might write a response poem based on the scent alone. It was like an elegant game of telephone, but with agar wood and existential metaphors. You take the burner when it reaches you. Inhale. The scent is soft, slightly green, slightly bitter. It calls to mind wind, but not cold. More like the rustle of leaves behind a sliding door. There's wood here, but also something airy, like light catching on silk. Faint plum blossom, maybe a wisp of rain on stones. You don't write anything down at first. You just sit with the scent. Let it work its way through the lines of the poem. Try to listen not just to the incense, but to the space between breath and verse. One line echoes again in your head. The ash remembers. Historians still argue whether poetic incense rounds were the highest form of Kōdō or just a fashionable passing trend among literati. Some incense schools embraced them as essential practice, an advanced way to sharpen both the nose and the mind. Others dismissed them as frivolous, unmeasurable, prone to emotional subjectivity. After all, how do you win a poem? You suspect the people in this room wouldn't care either way. This isn't a competition, it's a communion. The burner passes. The host offers a fresh slip of paper to each guest, a brush, ink. No one rushes, no one speaks. One by one, the poems begin to appear. You glimpse fragments as sleeves shift, scent like snow turning to mist. Too late to name the flower. A crow forgets its own breath. You blink. This is not small talk. And you realize the scent itself becomes a collaborator, a muse. You're not describing it, you're writing wit. It, like a co-author made of smoke and silence. You lift your brush and begin. The ink pools slightly, and you wait for it to settle. Then slowly, your lines emerge. Forgotten incense, like footsteps across soft ash, no echo remains. You're not sure if it's good. You're not sure it matters. One tale from a Kyoto incense salon tells of a woman who once wrote only one word in response to a poetic scent round, lantern. When asked to elaborate, she bowed and said, "The scent dimmed the room." Everyone applauded. No one won. And there's something strangely freeing about that. In a world full of rankings and achievements, this is an art that resists scoring, that prizes presence over performance, that asks only one thing of you: listen. The host collects the poems without comment. He folds them into a fan shape, places them inside a wooden bowl, and sets it beside the burner. They will not be read aloud. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Some things are meant to disappear. And here's a delightful oddity. Certain poetic incense gatherings featured anonymous scent compositions. A guest would select a blend, name it something like Twilight Before Regret or Rain That Forgot to Fall, and everyone else had to write a poem without knowing who chose it. Later, the group would try to match the blend to the poet. Reputation, intuition, and gentle betrayal all swirled together in one scented masquerade. The Edo poet Yuki no Koko once wrote, "The incense lied, but the poem confessed." You believe her. The next round begins. No poem this time, just the scent. And yet, after a while, a player clears his throat and softly recites, 3 days of silence. Then the bird calls once again, but no one listens. You bow slightly. The burner moves. No one says anything for a long time. Because this is what the poetic rounds do. They slow the world and remind you that some truths arrive not through explanation, but through air warm, ed gently over ash, wrapped in memory, then left to fade. The night has deepened. You can feel it not just in the stillness of the room, but in your own body. Heavier now, more grounded, like you've grown roots beneath your folded legs. And yet the air remains alive, not with chatter, not with action, but with scent, always scent. And now, it seems, with history. The host does something unexpected. He opens a new drawer in the incense chest, one you hadn't noticed until now. From within, he draws out a long, slender object wrapped in brocade. With careful fingers, he unfolds the cloth and reveals not a wood chip, but a burner, a different one. You hear a small intake of breath from someone across the room. Even the fox-eyed player goes still. This is no ordinary burner. It's a piece of art, a relic, an incense clock. You've heard of these before, vaguely, like folklore. But here it is, in front of you, a ceramic disc no wider than your hand, engraved with delicate lines like the rays of a sun. In each groove, a different kind of incense powder is laid, forming a spiral. As the incense burns, it moves like the slow hand of a scent-driven clock, marking time not with ticking, but with aroma. The host holds it gently, reverently, as if it were the jawbone of a saint. And maybe, in the world of Kōdō, it is. This incense clock, Kōroku, was once used not only to tell time, but to schedule meditations, tea sessions, even parts of the day in aristocratic households. A certain scent would signify morning, another, the hour of guests, another still, time for solitude. Tonight, it marks something different. The host lights the outer tip of the spiral, and for the first time, the scent enters the room before the game begins. It doesn't wait to be passed around. It just exists, fills the corners, unfolds itself into shadows. You smell something old, not stale, just ancient. A blend of sandalwood maybe, and ground herbs, mossy and bittersweet. A scent that feels like walking into an unused room in a very old house. The kind of place where time has been sitting quietly, undisturbed. The host sets the clock down in the center of the circle. Its smoke moves slowly, imperceptibly. The spiral burns inward, marking time not in seconds, but in presence. Historians still argue where the incense clock originated. Some trace it to Buddhist temples, where monks used powdered incense in sand trays to pace their chanting. Others claim it came from China, where powdered incense spirals were used as both timepieces and offerings. By the Edo period, incense clocks had become symbols of sophistication, used by poets, monks, and eccentric samurai alike. And this one? This clock? It's older than anyone in the room. You can tell by how they look at it. The scent it releases changes slowly as the spiral burns inward. At first it's dry, earthy. Then it turns slightly floral, then sweet, then bitter again. You realize it's a layered blend. Each section of the spiral contains a different recipe. Time, scented. You wonder how long it took someone to compose it, or how long it took someone to forget. Because that's what incense clocks also did. They marked loss. A beloved guest might burn one after their departure. A widow might light one on the first night alone. The scent would guide them through the silence, 1 inch of ash at a time. One tale tells of a scholar who burned an incense clock after his dearest friend passed away. He sat beside it, wrote 1 poem for every segment that burned. 12 hours. 12 poems. None survive. Only the scent recipe was preserved. A spiral called Echoes of the Unnamed Voice. The burner continues to curl its smoke inward. The room watches it like a flame. Not hypnotic. Zed, exactly. Just still. The host begins another round of the game. This time, instead of a single chip, he layers 3 small pieces, each from a different category, onto the mica plate. A koawase, or blend match. The scent that rises is complex. You smell salt first, then sweetness, then something like pine bark, then a twist of sour citrus. You realize this is meant to match the incense clock, to echo its passage through time. And now your task isn't just to identify it, it's to interpret it. The challenge of koawase wasn't guessing ingredients, it was detecting mood. Could you tell which blend represented dawn in spring versus dawn in exile? Could you taste the difference between early rain and remembered rain? You inhale again. This one smells like regret, but a quiet, resolved kind, like a letter never sent. The burner passes. You don't say a word. No one does. The incense clock ticks on, invisible but sure, spiraling slowly toward its center. And you realize something beautiful and strange. This clock doesn't just measure time, it creates time. It shapes the moment, decides how long you'll sit. When the scent shifts, the mood does too. It's not a schedule, it's a companion, a host, a quiet, fragrant moon guiding your steps through the night. You wonder if time has always smelled like this. You watch as the incense clock spirals on, curling in upon itself with that slow, elegant certainty. There is something oddly reassuring about it, like a lullaby made of smoke. You've stopped keeping track of how many rounds you've played, how many burners have passed through your hands. Time here isn't measured in minutes or matches. It's measured in moods. And just when you've settled into this scent-soaked rhythm, the host lifts his fan and, with a single, deliberate motion, shifts the air. It seems innocent, graceful even, but in this world, you've learned better. This is where the wind joins the game. The scent shifts, just slightly. One note vanishes, replaced by something deeper. The ash doesn't move, and the chip hasn't changed, but suddenly it smells different. Someone to your left exhales through their nose, half laughing. You can feel it too. The game has changed again, and this time the rules are not fixed. You are now entering the realm of fugo, the influence of wind, space, and atmosphere on the scent itself. This too is part of the art. In Kōdō, the air is not passive. It's a player, a trickster, a revealer of secrets and stealer of clarity. Even the shape of the room, the placement of a paper screen, the heat of bodies kneeling side by side, these all change the way a scent lives and dies. And the fan? That's no mere accessory. It's a tool, a weapon, a brush that paints scent into corners or away from rivals. Some players carry folding fans not for style but for scent control. You might think that's cheating. But here's the secret. In some versions of the game, it's allowed. Subtly, quietly, like playing the breeze instead of the board. Historians still debate how much air control was intentional in classic incense circles. Some incense masters insisted the air must remain undisturbed. No movement, no breeze, no fluctuation. Others welcomed it, believing that the unpredictability of scent in air mirrored the unpredictability of emotion itself. After all, what is incense but memory caught in wind? The burner reaches you again, and you notice it instantly. The scent is familiar, but wrong, or rather tilted. Like someone whispered the same word with a different accent. A little more bitter this time, a little less sweet. You angle your head, trying to catch what shifted. And you realize you're sitting at the outer edge of the breeze. The host glances toward the far wall, then subtly shifts a folding screen by just 2 finger widths. The scent changes again, warmer now, more resinous. You blink. This is incense as architecture. Some matches are even designed around wind. There are documented scent games in Kyoto palaces where guests were arranged not by status, but by airflow. A favored guest might be placed where the scent hit first. A rival? In a corner where the breeze never touched them. And yet, decorum demanded everyone act as if nothing had happened. A social ballet of invisible forces. You see it in practice now. Another burner begins its slow journey around the circle. This one contains a rare blend known as Spring's Remorse, a composition mentioned in several Edo scrolls. No one's entirely sure what's in it. Some say aged sandalwood, camphor, dried yuzu peel. Others claim it changes every generation, that the name is more important than the contents. You inhale. It is sad, beautifully sad. And again, the fan moves. This time not from the host, but from the fox-eyed player to your right. A gentle flick, disguised as a shift in posture. The breeze is faint, but deliberate. The scent twists toward the opposite side of the room, skipping you entirely. You feel the ghost of it, just enough to taunt. You smile. So it's going to be that kind of round. You wait, watching how the others respond. Some close their eyes, pretending not to notice. One adjusts his sleeve to subtly redirect the airflow back toward his nose. Another simply waits, unmoved, trusting the scent will come to him eventually. And you? You fold your hands, breathe softly, and let the breeze play its part. There's nothing to chase. The scent that reaches you, though fainter, is yours alone. No one else will have that precise version. And maybe that's the lesson. In one ancient Kōdō treatise, there's a line, "No scent is ever smelled twice." It's a reminder that incense, like wind, like memory, is always shifting. There's no kotas. Control, only acceptance. You don't hold it. You witness it, briefly, reverently, then you let it go. The burner finishes its round. The host folds his fan and places it beside the clock. A signal. The wind is done playing, at least for now. But the scent remains. Soft, elusive, almost imagined. There are stories of incense gatherings held on stormy nights, where windows were deliberately left open just a crack. The scent would flicker in the wind, grow bolder, vanish, return. One scroll records a player describing such a scent as a ghost in spring clothes. You believe it. The next round begins, but you barely notice. You're still tracing the memory of that last breeze, how it changed the scent, how it rewrote your expectation without warning. And you wonder how many times in your own life you've misjudged something, someone, simply because the wind was wrong. Kōdō, you realize, doesn't teach you how to win. It teaches you how to receive, how to adjust without resistance, how to trust that even what's missed still mattered. The burner is passed with a slower grace now, as if everyone in the room has entered a kind of shared trance. The smoke trails upward in delicate, uncertain spirals, like it's thinking of leaving but hasn't made up its mind yet. And you're ready for it this time, not just to guess or to breathe, but to let go. Because now, Kōdō is no longer a game. It's something quieter, something deeper. It's Zen. You don't realize it at first, not until the host dims the lantern slightly, leaving the room in a blue-toned hush. Not until you hear that almost imperceptible click as the incense clock shifts into its final chamber. The scent begins to change again. It's clean, sparse, a little bitter, like the moment after you swallow green tea. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, like a question you're afraid to answer. This is not meant to impress. It's not meant to challenge. This is meditative incense, and it has its own rhythm, zis. In Buddhism's influence on Kōdō can't be overstated. From the stillness of posture to the silence of the game, the entire practice has echoes of the monastery. But it wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about presence. Zen teaches you to notice the ordinary until it becomes extraordinary. And incense? Incense was the breath of the present moment made visible. You inhale. The scent doesn't open up like the others. It stays restrained, like a monk in robes that have never touched rain. It smells faintly of stone, maybe of moss. There's no sweetness, no spice, just being. It's called Shinzen-ko, incense of true presence. Unlike the competitive rounds or poetic compositions, Shinzen-ko is burned not to guess, not to compare, but to sit with. You don't analyze. You become the scent. You're not expected to write a poem. You're not expected to say anything. You are expected to stay. Just stay. One historical account tells of a Zen master who instructed his students to meditate as the incense burns. If their minds wandered before the chip had fully dissolved into ash, they would bow, clean the room again, and repeat. Not as punishment, as practice. The goal was not endurance, it was return. You shift slightly, and you're aware of everything. The creak of the tatami beneath your knee, the soft hum of someone's breath beside you, the scent hanging gently in the air like a silk banner. The host's gestures have changed too, slower, quieter, as if even his fingertips are bowing. And you begin to notice something else. No one reaches for their tally cards. No one watches the burner move. They're simply there, with it, in step, in breath. This is incense as meditation, as stillness, as surrender. There is no point. And because of that, it has become profound. Historians still puzzle over the blurred line between Kōdō and Zazen. wondering whether one influenced the other or if they simply grew together, side by side, like twin vines twisting up the same pine. What's clear is that by the late Muromachi period, incense was used in temples not just for ritual, but for mental discipline. And the samurai, many of them trained in both. To draw a sword with calm, to recite a poem with stillness, to listen to incense with no desire to master it. That was the path, a path of presence. You inhale again. It doesn't even smell like incense anymore. It smells like now, like a window opening, like breath returning, like the moment before you speak, when you realize nothing needs to be said. A Zen koan once asked, "What is the scent of one moment?" This is your answer. The burner pauses in front of you. The host doesn't gesture. He doesn't have to. You bow, lift, listen. The scent arrives like wind across empty paper, and you realize this moment cannot be replayed, not with memory, not with language. It can only be noticed, and then let go, just as incense teaches you to do. The scent that follows is playful again, not in a disruptive way, no fans or fox-like smirks this time, just something light, sweet, almost teasing. There's citrus here, or maybe the ghost of it. A faint floral edge, like plum blossom stirred through rice steam. You breathe in, and it feels like late afternoon in a sun-warmed corridor. The burner passes, and the host places something new at the center of the circle. A lacquer tray painted with golden leaves, upon which sits a small stack of cards, each marked with a delicate symbol. The first is flipped, a snowflake. The second, a crescent moon. The third, a maple leaf. You understand before anyone says a word. Tonight, the seasons have joined the game. This is another form of incense play. Oshiki, seasonal scent games. Not just about identifying the wood, but matching it to the feeling of the time of year. The scents used are curated not for their power, but for their alignment. With the moon, with the wind, with memory. In Kōdō, every season has a scent, and if you choose the wrong one, it's not that you failed, it's that you haven't listened. The host begins with winter. He chooses a pale, fine chip, almost feather-light. As it begins to warm, you're struck by how minimal the scent is. Cold, clean, like washed linen laid out under a silent sky. There's something slightly medicinal to it, like camphor softened by moonlight. You exhale slowly. It smells like waiting, like frost on temple stones, the kind of scent you might wear when standing still long enough to hear snowfall. The card with the snowflake is placed beside the burner. Next, spring. This chip is brighter, sharper. As the burner passes, the scent that drifts to you is soft, floral, with a hint of something green underneath. New leaves, distant pollen. You can almost feel the soil waking beneath your knees. It's optimistic, maybe even too optimistic. But spring is like that. You remember a passage from an old scroll. In spring, the wood must blush. Some say the practice of seasonal matching in Kōdō came from Heian-era poetry salons, where guests were expected to reference the month not just in their writing, but in the scent worn on their sleeves. A nobleman arriving with a summer blend during autumn? Social disaster. His sleeves would be fragrant with shame. Others believe it developed later, during the more codified Edo period, as incense schools formalized their seasonal calendars, month by month, scent by scent. Recipes were guarded like family secrets. A single blend might be reserved for one moon phase only, then hidden away again for a year. Next comes summer. The chip used is larger, slightly darker. The scent hits hard, warm, spicy, edged with something bitter. Not unpleasant, just bold. You smell sandalwood, definitely. A trace of clove, maybe even cinnamon. Odd for summer? Not in this context. Because summer incense is about cooling the body. You remember this. In old Kyoto, it was customary to burn incense that felt cooling in the nose and chest. Something sharp, clear, bracing. not because the incense was cold, but because the contrast made the heat feel more bearable. A famous blend from the time was called Wind Over Stone Bridge. It used dried mint leaf, shredded cedar, and a whisper of dried citrus peel. The effect? Like a breeze that never arrived, but promised to. And then comes autumn. This one is darker, softer. The scent curls low, like smoke sinking into fallen leaves. There's something sweet at the edges, like roasted chestnut. You think of melancholy things, not sadness exactly, more like completion. You remember another poem, read in the margins of an incense treatise. Chrysanthemums fall. The scent still lingers on sleeves no one wears again. You smile. That's autumn. And now, the challenge begins. The host lays 4 chips, unlabeled, on the tray. One by one, he places them on the mica plate. Each scent burns alone. You must match each one to its season. No hints, no repeats. Just your memory, your intuition, your sense of fit. The burner reaches you. The first scent is crisp, like cold air and crushed pine. You mark it winter. The second is heady, floral, almost boastful. Spring. The third, bitter, deep, like firewood and resolve. Autumn. And the last, spicy, bracing, unexpected. Summer. You hope you're right, but part of you doesn't care. Because in this round, it isn't about accuracy, it's about harmony. This form of play, seasonal alignment, was especially popular among Kyoto aristocrats, who believed scent was one of the 5 senses most closely tied to the spirit. To burn the wrong scent was not just aesthetically offensive, it was spiritually dissonant, like humming the wrong note in a temple bell song. One incense master once wrote, "The nose must listen as the plum listens for frost," and that's what you're doing now, not just smelling. Listening. The host collects the answer cards, says nothing, places them back in the tray, face down. You'll never know if you were correct. But you will remember how that autumn blend felt in your chest, like something closing gently, like a door that needed to be shut. The lanterns have grown dimmer now, though no one's touched them. Or maybe your eyes have simply grown used to the darkness, the way your mind has grown used to silence. A hush has settled so thoroughly over the room that even the smoke seems quieter, more reserved. You feel it in your breath, in your spine, in the space behind your thoughts. And now, without a word, the host begins to pack up the incense tools. Not hurriedly, not quite ceremonially, just gradually, like the tide going out. There's a rhythm to it, careful, practiced. The tiny tongs are cleaned with a silk cloth. The ash is sifted. The mica plate is wiped, cooled, and returned to its drawer. You think it's over. But then, he pauses and lifts one final chip. It's old. You can tell by the uneven edge, the way it's been shaved down over time, corner by corner. It's wrapped in deep violet paper, sealed with wax marked by a faded family crest. This is a legacy scent, and it means you're about to witness something rare. This round isn't part of the game. It's not for guessing. It's not for matching seasons or reading poems. It's for remembering. Because you've now reached the part of Kōdō that barely survives it all. The legacy round. This is where the host burns a fragment from a personal family collection. Wood so old, so rare, so irreplaceable that it may never be used again. Some chips have been passed down for centuries. Others survived fires, floods, even war. They carry not just scent, but lineage. Historians often treat this practice like folklore, spoken of in whispers, found in diaries, but rarely documented officially. Legacy chips were considered too private to be catalogued. Their scent compositions were rarely written down. Their names sometimes never spoken aloud outside the family. Tonight's is one of those. The host does not name it. He simply unwraps it and places it on the burner. You don't see smoke. But the scent begins anyway. It's complex, yes, but not in the usual way, not layered or dramatic. It's deep, gentle, a scent that feels like hands folded in prayer. You catch sandalwood, but softened, aloes wood, but mellowed by time. There's something dusty and warm, like a faded letter tucked in the back of a drawer. And beneath it all, an edge of grief. You're not sure how you know, but you know. This is a scent that remembers something that can't be spoken. In one family's account, a legacy chip called Crane Returning to Branch was only burned once every generation, at the death of the head of the household. It wasn't just a memorial. It was a way to keep the scent of that person, what they loved, what they wore, alive for one final breath. Another tale tells of a chip burned at a wedding, scented with a blend created by the couple's grandparents. No one could name it, but everyone cried. Legacy incense is sent as memory, and memory, when burned, becomes ceremony. The burner is passed around, but no one tries to guess it. They simply hold it. Listen. Inhale. You do too. And in that moment, the chip tells you everything it's ever carried. You see a garden after rain, a silk ribbon laid gently over a brush, hands tying a sash, a bowl of tea that was poured but never drunk, the quiet ache of farewell. You blink, and the scent changes again, fainter now, like the ghost of someone humming. And then, it's gone. The host picks up the fragment of what's left, barely a sliver, places it in a small envelope of gold paper, seals it with a press of his thumb, and sets it back into the chest. Not all things are meant to be finished. You think of your own memories now, scents you didn't realize you remembered, the smell of someone's laundry on a cold morning, the wooden drawers of a room that doesn't exist anymore, a letter, a sweater, a season. And you wonder, if you could distill your entire life into one final breath of wood smoke, what would it smell like? Would it be bitter or sweet? Would it say what you meant to say? Legacy incense never answers. It just asks. You expected the final rounds to feel heavier, more ceremonial, perhaps even mournful, but something unexpected has crept into the room instead. Laughter, quiet, restrained, but unmistakable. It begins with a small snort from one of the older players after inhaling a particularly odd scent. Then a chuckle from another who nearly sneezes on the exhale. The host smiles, bows his head slightly, and produces a new box, smaller than the others, covered in faded silk, printed with dancing turtles. The lid is lifted. Inside, tiny incense chips cut into shapes. A fan, a cat, a crescent moon, one shaped, unmistakably, like a gourd. This is Waraiko, the incense of laughter. Tonight you're ending with a trick round. Not every gathering ends with one, but the tradition is older than you might guess. Long before incense was formalized, before the strict rules of Kōdō solidified into schools, it was a game, a parlor pastime, a way to pass long nights with friends, monks, and rivals alike. And sometimes those games got a little mischievous. One chip is placed on the burner. It smells, to put it kindly, strange, sweet, but not the good kind of sweet, like sugar burned in a teacup, like someone left dried plums in a drawer too long. One note even smells faintly of wet rice paper. You glance around. Everyone is struggling to keep a straight face. And that's the point. Waraiko was designed to break the spell, to jolt players out of their solemnity and back into the world. It reminds you that incense is not sacred unless it's also human, that laughter and elegance are not mutually exclusive. Historians have found references to humorous incense matches dating back to the Kamakura period, often mentioned in the diaries of court nobles and entertainers. One noted round involved guessing whether a chip contained actual scent or just burnt paper disguised as incense. Another required each guest to invent the name of the scent after smelling it. One poor samurai dubbed his round "Rooster After Rain." It stuck for centuries. The burner comes to you. You breathe in. It smells like sweet beans, seaweed, a faint note of, was that daikon? You suppress a laugh, barely. The player beside you writes something on his tally card. When the host collects it later, you spot it as he passes. Autumn festival after someone drops a dumpling. That's the thing with these trick rounds. No one's trying to be right. They're trying to be witty. There's a kind of joy in that. Even among all the seriousness and reverence of Kōdō, there's room for mischief, for levity, for scent as punchline, and summed. These jokes have meaning. In one preserved scroll, a late Edo incense master designed an entire 10-round match where every scent referenced a private in-joke shared among the players. Names like lantern with no candle, cracked teacup philosophy, and rain that forgot itself. No one else would ever understand the references, and that was the point. The scent didn't just make people laugh, it made them remember. Because when laughter echoes in a quiet room, it sticks longer than incense. The host places the final trick chip on the burner. This one smells oddly familiar, like the sweet stall outside your childhood school. Roasted chestnuts, maybe, or syrup-soaked yams. You close your eyes. You're back in your wool scarf, waiting in line, hand in your coat pocket, coins sweating in your palm. When you open your eyes, you're back in the circle. The burner moves on, and the moment goes with it. The laughter fades, but the warmth remains. You've gone from reverence to presence to memory, and now to connection. Because ultimately, what Kōdō teaches isn't just scent or silence, it's attunement to others, to time, to yourself. And sometimes, attunement means letting go of formality long enough to smell something silly and say, "That? That smells like someone spilled tea on their homework." The host nods once more, a quiet bow, and the game ends. The circle remains unbroken, though the game is done. No incense burns now, no ash is stirred. The last of the chips have been tucked back into their silken folds, the tally cards collected, the fans folded, the trays stacked like sleeping petals. And yet no one stands, no one moves. Because the silence now is different, not the kind that asks for stillness, but the kind that holds it. You sit within it, letting the absence of scent become a scent of its own. Your hands rest on your knees, your eyes half-lidded. Your breathing sinks again to that rhythm you forgot you had. Unhurried, unshaped by purpose. You are not here to win, not here to understand. You are here to remain. The host stands at last, not abruptly, but with the grace of one who has stood 1,000 times before. He bows, slowly, not as a farewell, but as a return. A soft acknowledgement that the game is over, but the presence continues. And then, with a practiced hand, he removes the incense clock from its resting place. You'd nearly forgotten it was still there. The spiral is gone now. A perfect trail of ash marks where scent once moved. A quiet record of time not measured by hours, but by attention. You watch him lift it gently, empty the ash into a cedar box, and close the lid with a quiet click. Done. There are no final words, no applause. This is not a performance. This is a practice. And like all practices, it ends not with a conclusion, but with a breath. You rise with the others. Your knees are stiff. You notice for the first time the sound of a night insect outside, just beyond the paper wall. A reminder that the world continued moving, even as you sat still within it. The host gestures toward a small lacquer basin by the door. One by one, the guests pass it, dipping their hands in warm water scented faintly with chrysanthemum. A final cleanse, not of the body, of the moment. You follow, cupping the water. It warms your palms, clears your chest. And then, quietly, you step into the hall. Behind you, the room remains lit by a single lantern. The scent of sandalwood still lingers, though it fades with every step. You carry it in your sleeves, in your breath, in the quiet ache behind your ribs. But you do not try to preserve it. You let it pass. Because now you understand. Kōdō is not about memory. It's about impermanence, about sitting with something fragile and fleeting, inhaling it fully and letting it go. And as you walk into the night, the moon high and soft and full of distance, you carry nothing with you, except everything. Word count, 1,286. 300 word wind down, and now you let go. Let the sense of the night dissolve, like smoke curling gently into shadow. Let the images fade, the ashtray, the lacquer boxes, the soft hiss of a breath drawn in stillness. You're not in that incense hall anymore. You're here, in your room, in your body, wrapped in quiet. Take one slow inhale. Let it fill your lungs not with air, but with ease. And now, exhale, longer, softer, like scent leaving wood. You've wandered through chambers of silk and cedar, listened to poems spoken in smoke, and traced time with nothing but ash. You've heard silence shaped into stories and laughter carried on fragrant breeze. Now, let all of that rest. Your thoughts, like incense, may linger. That's okay. Let them rise, then fall. Let them blur at the edges, drift sideways, disappear. You are still, you are warm, you are safe. Let your mind walk a little slower now. Let your body settle deeper into the surface beneath you, whether it's a mattress, a floor, or the quiet weight of blankets pulling you towards sleep. No need to remember, no need to follow. You don't even need to dream, just breathe, soft and low, like a final ember. And if your thoughts begin to stir again, gently remind them, this moment is enough. This stillness is enough. This breath is enough. Sleep well, and may your dreams drift like the faintest trace of sandalwood, winding its way through memory, only to return as comfort. Good night.